her and her drive
Yeah.
and motivation. So that, or whenever they tell my wife something that they don't want me to know, but that the beatings are working. That's how I always, tell people. I had a buddy that, if a kid lacks motivation, don't tell them, show them. Yeah, a buddy was talking about his daughter was really fast, on cross country, but she's having a problem with motivation. And I was like, well, what have you done to show her? What have you done, rather than just talking it? He's like, well, I'm not as fast as her. I can't run with her. I was like, you don't have to be as fast as her. Let her see you run a 5K and throw up it. Let her see that you put all your heart into something and everything, and then she'll know. So that is one of the things that makes me feel accomplished. The other thing is whenever someone contacts me who recently got a prenatal diagnosis of a disability, and we'll talk, and I'll send them stories and check on them occasionally. And most of the time they have the baby, and I'll, say, did a light click? And like, no, not yet.
Yeah.
But it never fails. Within a few months, they'll, post pictures of them on a vacation with the baby, or them hugging and cuddling with it and everything. And I'll contact them, or they'll contact me, and they'll like, yeah, it finally happened. So walking somebody through that, and if they can get that light to come on one day sooner than it would have, without me, that's the biggest accomplishment.
For sure.
Accomplished.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, can you kind of tell me about the relationships you've gained from doing this with the Paisley's Angels, right?
Ainsley's Angels.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Dude, I don't even know where to start. Just the stories of people I've met and lessons I've learned, and the people that I never would have gotten out of my circle to meet. A couple of funny stories was the first time I pushed adults.
Yeah.
And I'm at the starting line with a young man, Jerome, who's mentally challenged. And his parents and caregivers are over on the side, and we're singing the national anthem. And it comes to the, rockets, red glare, the bombs bursting in air, and Jerome's standing up singing at the top of his lungs. And
awesome.
Says the rockets, red glare, the bombs bursting in air. He goes, boom, and throws his arms way out in the air. And everybody turns around and looks at Jerome. And I'm like, man, maybe I should tell Jerome, hey, tone it down a little bit.
Yeah.
But it dawned on me right then, that as many sporting events as I've been to, and, singing the national anthem at, military, I'd never sang it with as much passion as Jerome did right then. He was feeling it.
He was pumped up.
Get after it,
Yeah.
And with that chair, you have to lean it back to turn. And every time we would come up to a turn, I'd lean him back, and he'd throw his arms out and, get scared that he was tipping over backwards. And we come up to the first turn, another turn. I was like, hey, Jerome, I was like, I'm going to have to tip you back and make this turn. Oh, don't do it, brother. Don't do it, brother. Don't do it. So, Jerome, Corey, I ran up in South Dakota, and at the end of it, Corey had cerebral palsy, and I was high-fiving, congratulating, and everything. And he said, Dad, thanks for the opportunity. I told him, and he's like, thanks, for coming. He said, I love you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, it's all about you, no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I got on the bus to go back to the hotel, and I thought, what kept me from telling Corey I loved him? I had trained for 20 weeks getting ready for that, and thought about him the entire time of doing it, but I couldn't express myself. He went to the church that bought the chair. And I wrote him a letter when I got back, telling him that I was sorry that I couldn't open up, the way he did. And then we'll talk about her in a minute. I believe Gabby's a whole book into herself. Gabby's was a high school cheerleader in Tennessee with cerebral palsy, and we've run a lot of races together. She and I, a lot of good stories.
Yeah. So I liked how you said just a few minutes ago, you were talking about that you're not just your daughter, but even all these people, how they are teaching you more than you actually teaching them, right? And
yes.
I understand that. Like I have a daughter that is she has an autoimmune disease, and where one side of her face atrophies. And I couldn't imagine how she actually feels. Like I try to I tell her she's beautiful. We have her do affirmations looking in the mirror, but she sees herself totally different than how we see her. You know what I mean? She sees a face that's disfigured, and we see her. We see her beauty. We see, all that. And it's interesting how it can teach us so much, and we don't really know exactly what they're going through. So I sometimes feel like we can't actually teach them everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't have that personal experience, and it's really interesting. I liked how you said that.
Yeah, there's a level of toughness that they have that you can only get by going through that.
Yeah.
Right.
I get a cold and I am done. I am in the
man
bed.
Cold.
Yeah, bring me everything. I like to brag that I'm tough and I can do endurance events and work outside and do whatever. But I mean, if to fight back through what you did, Shane, I don't know that I could do that.
You could.
So
I have confidence that you could, because you have that no days off attitude, and you're always getting after it. So I feel like you would definitely be able to come back from a brain injury.
Yeah. I've said this before on a different podcast, but you never know how strong you can be until being strong is what you have to be.
Yeah.
It's a Bob Marley quote.
Exactly. That's what, there's another person I met, Sharice Hillard, in South Florida, and I got invited to come over and run in a race, and they were going to have somebody for me to push. And they said that her mom was really fast, that last year she'd won the women's division. And in my mind, I'm like, well, why am I pushing, her daughter? Maybe she was supposed to blow the doors off and win. And so we went over, and I had Paisley. And so that day of the race, she said, would you mind if I push Kayla? And I was like, no. I was like, that's stupid. You already do it.
Yeah.
Everything. So she and I, lined up, and I ran with her and kind of taught her some of the techniques that I use, and was running with
like leaning back and stuff.
Yeah, swinging one arm when you need to, using both hands uphill. It's just, there's not a book on there's not a coach on how to do this. And so we come up, about the last quarter mile, and I had more in the tank. So I'm like, do I take off and, win this thing, or do I, first race, kind of hold back and watch them win and everything. So with the finish line coming up, I was like, hey, go get it, and she took off, and her and Kayla won the race. And she's gone on to organize all types of, races. That's and awesome. Run with Kayla.
That's cool.
So to be, there with her on that first thing, but she is super tough. She makes fun of me all the time because she'll post videos of Kayla, and I'll cry and send her, and she tells me I'm the wimpiest tough guy she knows. So yeah.
So I want to ask you, what has been the hardest lesson you have had to learn? Because it sounds like being involved in what you're doing, you can learn a lot of lessons.
Yes. The hardest one is, the biggest one with Paisley is that everything happens for a reason. That you grow up with an alcoholic father, you can perpetuate that and carry it with you, or you can learn, the lessons of what not to be.
Right.
You have a boss, who maybe, talks the talk and doesn't walk the walk. Well, whenever you get into a position of leadership, you have the option of, continuing it or learning the lessons that you didn't like about
you
that
can
guy.
Learn the biggest lessons from people you don't agree with or share the same worth ethic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Everybody, to me, it's binary. Pretty much everybody I meet, and they're a 1 or a 0. You're either an example of somebody I want to be, or you're somebody that I use as an example of what I'm not going to do.
That reminds me of something John said on a podcast that about his father and what he learned from him. Can you kind of tell that story?
Yeah. So basically, I hadn't even seen my dad for a while at this point. Went down, saw him. He's like, I had 5 girls at the time. And he's like, how did you turn out? How did you even, you're married to a beautiful woman. You have these beautiful daughters. Like you're still married. You're not divorced. You're not addicted to anything anymore. Like, how did you do that? And I said, well, you want honesty. I had the perfect example of what not to be, and that was you.
Yep.
Yes.
And I know it was kind of harsh to say to your dad, but he didn't even take it that way. He was literally like, okay. Yeah. He's like, you're right. You're right. I'm glad that you didn't follow my footsteps, that you wanted to be different than me.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one, you have that choice, either, following the footsteps or turn around and walk the complete opposite direction.
Yeah. I tell my kids, I'm like, you don't have to do drugs to know that they're not good for you.
No.
You don't have to you don't have to make the same mistakes that your parents make. You don't have to go through that kind of stuff. You can see the examples of what you can learn from other people's experiences.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I want to shift gears a little bit and talk to you about walking 100 miles with your daughter. What's your daughter's name that did that?
That's Pepper, my oldest.
Okay. So, what was that like?
A friend of mine works out at a gym. We were really good friends at the time, and Christ Fit. And every year in December, they walk 100 miles with the cross, just to glorify Jesus and get out there and do some ministry. So he had done it for 2 or 3 years. I think he made it to the halfway point once and done 30 miles another time. So he invited us to do it. And, of course, he knows me, but I told him, like, if I'm doing it, we're doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm not in it for halfway. And so I presented it to Pepper if she wanted to do it. And she's like, yeah. So she started training for it and running long distance on the weekends. And we got mentally prepared. We watched the entire Rocky series. From beginning to end
awesome.
On that. And so she bailed in there and walked. The very first night she kind of had a breakdown about 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and she didn't know she could do it, and that was probably about mile 30, and I told her to get a Red Bull and gave her some ibuprofen, and my goodness, man, she was a bullet after that. I lost her. She was up at the front of the pack, and we stopped about 2 hours later. She goes, "Where's that cooler? I need another Red Bull." I was like, "No."
Red Bull gives you wings.
Yeah, we are regulating this for the next few days. So, we stopped at the halfway point, had breakfast, and the next day turned around. It was at that point I asked her, I was like, "Are you going to go on?" My 2 friends, they dropped out at that point. She's like, "Yeah, I'm going." I was like, "All right, well, I'm with you." And so we went on, and as people fell out and cycled in and out, talking to the organizer, he said that he's done it for 8 years and probably had about 800 people participate in it, and only had about 12 complete it.
Oh my!
And
wow.
had never had anybody complete it their first time.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she was by far the youngest to ever do it. So
that's cool.
They would ask me,
how old was she at this time?
14.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. So, I'd have people ask me, like, how do you, get a 14-year-old girl to walk 100 miles?
Yeah.
First of all, I never told her she couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And second of all, I'm right here with her. When she'd start to fall back a little bit, I'd grab her hand and we'd pull her along a little bit. But she really had very few moments of doubt in the whole thing.
Yeah. That's
awesome.
Amazing.
She has that from now on. She has that in her hip pocket. That at 14, I walked 100 miles whenever special forces, law enforcement people were dropping out left and right. So that mental toughness that she can carry with her on everything.
She can always have that in her back pocket. Anytime that there's something hard, which there will be. There's always going to be hard things to go through in life. Now she can pull that out and say, well, I did this.
Yes.
And I know I can do this next thing that's in front of me.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of things with the long distance running that I can apply to work and life and everything, because I've been through it, out on the road. If I can go do it there, I can do it in this situation. So I wanted her to have that.
Yeah.
Right. I like how you said that the best way to get somebody to do something is to be there right with them. That is a super important lesson for all of us. If we really, really